Welcome to the 7th part of Orangina, my build for the Great Guitar Build-Off 2021. Today we're going to be talking mostly about finishing, and although it looks like a simple color, you know it's never really simple. If you do want to go back to the beginning, I'll link it up there. So come and join me. Let's paint a guitar. Hi, I'm Yoav and this is the Electric Luthier, in the 7th part of my Orangina build. Today we'll start going through the steps of painting. There's going to be a lot of sanding and paint drying, and as usual, I'll either fast forward or skip some parts. The body is ready, or so I thought, and I already gave it a first coat of sanding sealer. I've laid it on fairly thick, and I now have a lot of sanding to do. I try to sand as much as I can with the orbital sander, especially the flat areas. I then follow manually with the flat or the rounded rubber blocks. I wanted to see if the sanding sealer will act as a grain filler as well as a sealer. After a few color tests I did on the side, I decided to give the body a white base coat before starting to layer the orange. The base coat will give me two things. First, the wood is a bit dark green and uneven in color, and that takes away from the orange. A light base layer will let the orange be brighter and more uniform. Second, a flat color will really bring out any imperfections and will allow me to go back and fix them. A few imperfections do show up, and my attempt to hide the grain with the sanding sealer was not satisfying either. A more serious issue I missed before was the position of the bridge saddles for the longer strings. Because I didn't use the original scale length the original guitar used, my longer strings came out too long and the saddles were pushed too far back. Since I'm going to use this wood putty for a few little fixes as well as grain filling, I decided to use it to also rebuild a bit of the back end and give it more support to the saddles, at least visually. Now the purists may frown upon such blatant cheating, but I have decided to push on and fix whatever I can fix and not start from scratch. This, after all, is one of the benefits of the flat color, and larger companies use fillers for hiding many types of wood issues as well. I try to maintain the same line, but just push it backwards with the longer strings. After I gave the thick putty plenty of time to dry, I sand it along with the rest of the body. I sculpt the desired shape and smooth everything. Any area which had any grain or other issues was filled and sanded smooth as well. It's now time to whip out the orange cans. I start layering. Cans are really a great solution for anyone who doesn't have a spray gun. And if you have the right shade and you follow a few simple guidelines, you can get really good results. The number one way to ruin your work is having runs. A single run can set you back a few layers and really mess things up. The very simple solution is always underdo instead of overdoing it. Runs occur when there's too much material on an angled surface. So I just try to make thinner coats and just have more of them. The motion can also help. Always start and finish spraying off your guitar, and don't linger on one spot. Less is better than too much, and quicker motion is better than too slow. Trust me, I've learned it the hard way. It's very tempting and satisfying to lay a thick coat, but it's a delicate balance. I'll usually start from the outline, then do a very light coat on one side, and then the other. Right after that, I'll go to the first side and have another light coat moving 90 degrees to the first one and filling in the gaps. Then the same for the second side. I then rotate it a bit, rotisserie style, to see if I missed anything and see that there are no accumulations anywhere. If I do see any sign of a potential puddle, I try and position it in an angle it will not run. Otherwise, I leave it to dry facing down, so if any speckles of dust do settle on it, it'll be on the back side. I'll repeat this after 15-20 minutes. Now it's already warm here, so drying time is fairly quick. If I am in a rush, I'll repeat a third time after 20 more minutes, or wait a few hours and do a couple more coats in a similar fashion. Otherwise, I would let it dry overnight. After 2 sessions, I have 4 light coats and I go over the surface lightly with some steel wool. This is done just to remove any little paint spit dots you may get in the beginning of a spray or with the dirty nozzle. The steel wool will also scuff the surface and give it a very gentle sanding. I also removed the masking tape from the cavities. I want the rims of the cavities to be painted. Then I give it a couple of light coats and let it dry again. While the body is drying, I'm going to give my neck some color. I need to tape off the fretboard and the face of the headstock. The headstock will later be colored orange, but for now I'll cover it. I give a couple of coats, 15 minutes apart, and repeat in the next day. When the black will dry enough, I'll flip it and give the headstock a few layers of orange. But in between, I'll get back to the body. At this point, it's probably as orange as it's going to be, and before I give one last coat and go into clear coats, there are a few details I want to finish and verify. The last coat will also cover anything I might mess up at this point. First, I want to check the neck fit after the paint. If it's not too tight, I prefer to continue letting the paint layer on. Next is shielding the cavities. I have a tube of graphite dust and I'm going to mix it generously with a bit of black acrylic. I want there to be just enough paint to hold the graphite, not too much. I try to mix it well and then I start painting with it. I paint a thick layer. For the pickup cavities, the paint is going to be visible around the pickups themselves, so I want to make a neat straight line. Let's not forget the cover as well. I just ran out of copper paper and I've been wanting to try this graphite trick for a while. I've seen a few tests done with several materials and this seems to give the best result as far as conductivity and shielding. The last invasive action I want to take while I have a chance to touch up the paint is to widen the holes I made for the bridge saddles. These were partly covered by the putty. I use a small drill bit and manually start widening the covered holes according to the position of each saddle. I then switch to a drill with a wider bit, drilling backwards to avoid chipping and grabbing. I go saddle by saddle and make sure they all fit. They're tight, but they fit. They're very snug, but that's better than loose. When the shielding paint is dry enough, I want to cover it and prepare for the last coat of orange and the clear coats. I carefully place the masking tape so that the edge of the pickups will be orange and just the inside black. The last orange coat is applied carefully to mostly give another coat to the areas I touched up and the cavities edges. Not overdoing it is the main motivation here. When this is dry, I take the masking tape off the pickup cavities. I don't mind the poly covering the shielding paint. It will just make it darker. The plan for the clear coat is multiple coats of high gloss polyurethane with my electric spray gun. It tends to spray relatively large droplets, even with the smallest nozzle, but it does give an even and consistent spray. For around $60, that's not bad. I'm hoping that with enough layers, the orange peel will even out. The drying time between layers is also much longer than the canned version, but that's not the gun's fault. Polyurethane, unlike nitrocellulose and other types of lacquer, doesn't bond with the previous layers to become one thick coat. It just builds and builds. It does end up pretty seamless to the eye, but if deeper layers did not dry and cure long enough, you may end up with a top coat that stays soft for an unreasonable amount of time. I think it'll also buff and polish better if properly cured. I'm trying to give each application the 24 hours the manufacturer recommended. When dry the next day, you can clearly see the orange peel effect of those large droplets, but I'm just starting to build up a thick gloss. Going for a second coat, trying not to overdo it and cause any runs. This gun is spraying a lot of paint. I'm not sure if the rotation helps even out the thicker areas and avoid puddles, or if it's just in my head. While this is drying, I want to finish the paint on the neck. I now cover the multiple layers of black with masking tape to paint the front of the headstock orange and get it ready to join the clear coating party. Since this is flat, I lay a generous layer of paint and after 15 minutes, give it another one. I'll repeat this a few hours later and then let it dry overnight. I'll continue layering both the body and neck with multiple layers of clear coat until the next time when I'll be polishing and hopefully getting into the final stages of the build and the assembly. If you found this useful in any way, please like, subscribe and all that. I've linked all the tools and parts I used, and if you do end up buying anything, I may actually get a small commission and will be encouraged to make more of these videos. There are also links to guitar building articles on my website, theelectricluthier.com, and lots more videos on my channel. So until next time, go ahead, build a guitar.